week for the fantasy football season, and here's a few wide receivers I looked at off the wire this week. The first guy, Mac Hollins of the Vegas Raiders. So Mac Hollins in the offseason, it was just another depth move signing here from Hollins, the former Miami Dolphins signing with this Raider team. But so far this season, he's had 2 solid fantasy days in the first 3. Week 1 at the Chargers, he didn't do much. 1 catch, 16 yards. Week 2 versus Arizona, 5 catches, 66 yards. And Week 3 at the Tennessee Titans, 10 targets in that one, 8 catches, 158 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. So I know Hunter Renfrow, he was out in the Week 3 ball game at Tennessee here. But right here, they got trust in Mac Hollins, it looks like. He had a bigger role in Week 2 with 8 targets. And then here, Week 3 at Tennessee with 10 targets. So right now, I know it's a pretty tough matchup in Week 4 versus the Denver Broncos, but that's a division matchup. Anything could go. And this Raider team now, they're 0-3 to start the season here, and they're pretty desperate. And they don't really have a number 2 wide receiver who lines up on the outside for this roster. I know Hunter Renfrow's like their number 2 in retrospect, but he's more of a slot guy. So right now, after the last 2 weeks here, where Hollins getting 18 targets and having a 30-point fantasy day in PPR leagues here, he's definitely a wide receiver. You got to go out there and get on the wire, and he's available in 99% of fantasy leagues. The next guy's Romeo Dobbs of the Green Bay Packers. So Dobbs and Aaron Rodgers, it looked like they had a good rapport in Week 3. And Dobbs right now, he's available in tons of fantasy leagues, over 70% of leagues. So in the early going for Dobbs, Week 1 in Minnesota, 4 catches, 37 yards, 11 rush yards. Week 2 versus Chicago, non-existent, 2 catches, 27 yards. And Week 3 at Tampa, the coming out party here for Dobbs, 8 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown. And he caught all 8 of his targets. So Week 4 here, mediocre matchup versus the New England Patriots. But like I said, him and Rodgers, they were on the same page. A lot of stop and turn quick routes. They were getting Dobbs the ball. Found the end zone early in the ball game. And this Packer team now, it looks like they're getting things in line here with their wide receiver position. I know Sammy Watkins is hurt, and it opens things up here for Dobbs. And anyway, it's time for the rookies. I think they're going to run with Lazard, Dobbs, Randall Cobb, and Watson as the top 4 wide receivers here on this Packer team. And like I said, Rodgers, he's looked pretty sharp now over the last 2 weeks here. And Romeo Dobbs, he's definitely a guy that could get a bigger role. And they're looking for a guy to take a lot of targets, obviously, from Devonte Adams, who got traded to Vegas. So right now, Romeo Dobbs, one of the better pickups at every position this week here for Week 4. The next wide receivers, Greg Dortch of the Arizona Cardinals. So Dortch, another rookie here, and he's coming out of nowhere so far. And with Ronaldo Moore's injury, I think this guy, they can't take him out of the rotation and in the lineup here. Right now, he's been a perfect slot receiver. AJ Green, he went down in this Week 3 ball game as well with a knee injury, and he didn't return. So far in the early going for Dortch, he's gone over 13 or more fantasy points in the first 3 weeks of the season. Week 1 versus Kansas City, 7 catches, 63 yards. Week 2 at the Vegas Raiders, 4 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown. And then Week 3, his best game to date, 9 catches, 80 yards on 10 targets. So right here, Week 4, a good matchup at the Carolina Panthers, I think, for Dortch. Even though we saw this Panther defense play great defense versus the New Orleans Saints. But I think Kyler Murray and this Arizona Cardinal team, they got to get back on track here. They got to run the football a little more as well. But anyway, Greg Dortch, there's no way they could take him out of the lineup. I mean, Hollywood Brown have been all the production just about for this Arizona Cardinal team. And right now, he's available in over 80% of fantasy leagues here, and as a flex option or a number 3 receiver in 3 receiver leagues here. Dortch is a definitely big ad this week here, and he can help owners. Even if Ronaldo Moore comes back, I think at this point, it's too late to take Dortch out of the lineup, and he's definitely a guy who's been a factor and playing a good role. The next guy is Devonte Parker of the New England Patriots. So Parker, I know I said to drop him last week, but now with the injury to Jacoby Myers coming into the game, he got a bigger role. And he had a monster ball game, and that's why I'm highlighting him. I'm not saying this guy's going to go out there and put up numbers every week now. Mac Jones is banged up with an ankle injury that could cause him time as well, with a ligament and maybe a sprain in there. But Devonte Parker, he came out and had a big ball game in Week 3 versus Baltimore. Week 1 in Miami, 1 catch, 9 yards. Week 2 at Pittsburgh, 2 targets, didn't catch a catch with a goose egg. And Week 3 versus Baltimore, 5 catches, 156 yards on 10 targets. Obviously, I got to highlight that. But he's a guy that I think is still going to be inconsistent. He's lower on my priority list than most of the receivers on this list here is Devonte Parker. But right now, you got to highlight it. A guy going for 156 yards and available in over 70% of fantasy leagues. But next week, definitely a tough matchup at the Green Bay Packers. The next wide receiver is Tyler Boyd of the Cincinnati Bengals. So this Cincinnati Bengal team finally got the first win of the season under their belt in week 3. And Tyler Boyd had a big ball game, 4 catches, 105 yards and a touchdown, but he had a long one in that one where it went for a 56-yard touchdown, breaking a tackle and taking it to the house versus the New York Jets. So right now he's available in over 45% of fantasy leagues. Here's Tyler Boyd. In the first 2 out of 3 weeks, it's been good games for him. Week 1 versus Pittsburgh, 4 catches, 33 yards and a touch. Week 2 with Dallas, 2 catches, 17 yards, a 2-point conversion. And week 3 at the Jets, the 4 catches, 105 yards and a touchdown. And also T. Higgins, he took a massive hit in this one. And Higgins is going to play in week 4. It's a Thursday night football game here versus the Miami Dolphins. Even though this Dolphin D has looked great so far in the early going. And this is going to be a good matchup on Thursday night football. So what Higgins banged up, receiver looks like going into that ball game. And a guy I would have confidence starting, even though I know Miami's played good defense. Receivers have still put up pretty good numbers versus them in the early going of the season. And he's a guy to add this week. The next guy is Russell Gage of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Russell Gage, it was down to him, Perriman, and Cole Beasley pretty much as the top 3 guys in week 3 for this Tampa Bay Buc team. And Gage, 13 targets in that one, 12 catches, 87 yards, a touchdown, and a fumble loss, 25 fantasy points in PPR leagues. And that's nothing to obviously deny or not talk about here for Russell Gage. So Gage, he's going to be in this lineup a lot, I think, for this team. Mike Evans, yes, he'll come back in week 4 after the 1-game suspension. But Julio Jones has a partially torn PCL. You can't count on him. He'd just be injury prone over the last 3 or 4 years here. And Chris Godwin with a hamstring, I don't know if he's going to be back next week as well. So right now, Russell Gage as the number 2 receiver, it looks like, for this Tampa Bay Buc team. He's a guy to highlight and to get on the wire. So the first few games here for him, he's been banged up as well with a hamstring injury. But obviously in week 3, he looked good and made plays. Week 1 at Dallas, 2 catches, 13 yards. Week 2 with the Saints in that one, 5 catches, 28 yards. And week 3 versus the Packers, like I mentioned, 12 catches, 87 yards, a touchdown, and a fumble loss. So right here, week 4, if they get a few guys back over there in Tampa, Russell Gage, he's not going to have a lot of attention on him. And we've seen him be a guy who made plays in the Atlanta Falcon days for him over the last few seasons. So right now, decent matchup week 4 versus Kansas City. Tampa Bay should be getting some reinforcements back. At least Mike Evans for sure is coming back in week 4 here. And he's a guy available in over 55% of fantasy leagues. And the final wide receiver I look to get on the wire this week, Zay Jones of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Zay Jones, a lot of people question why the Jaguars went out there and spent big money on him in free agency in the offseason. But so far, 2 out of 3 first ball games, he's been playing good football here, Zay Jones. Week 1 at Washington, 6 catches, 65 yards. Week 2 versus Indianapolis, a down ball game, 3 catches, 23 yards. And week 3 at the Chargers, 10 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown. So week 4, I know a tough matchup at the Philadelphia Eagles. But right here, Trevor Lawrence obviously likes Zay Jones, having 11 targets and 10 catches in week 3. And so far, a lot of targets. Targets definitely mean something. And in the first 3 ball games, he's got 24 targets as Jones. He's a guy that could be a decent flex option for some weeks here. Next week, like I said, not great matchups. But after that, Houston, Indianapolis, and the Giants, pretty good matchups coming up here for Zay Jones. And he's a guy available in 90% of fantasy leagues. So right here, pretty deep week at the wide receiver position here. And Zay Jones is definitely a guy I would consider on the waiver wire. So that's a few wide receivers I look to get on the waiver wire for week 4 of the fantasy football season.